Keanu Reeves had always been the kind of person who preferred to stay in the background. He wasn't one for flashy headlines or attention-grabbing interviews. People admired him not just because he was an incredible actor, but also because he carried himself with a quiet humility that felt rare in Hollywood. Over the years, fans had grown used to seeing him let his work do the talking, whether it was through action-packed roles like John Wick or heartfelt performances in movies like The Matrix and A Walk in the Clouds. But this time, something was different. It started with an announcement that caught everyone by surprise. Keanu had agreed to sit down for an exclusive interview with a well-known journalist, someone known for asking thoughtful questions rather than prying into private lives. The buzz around the interview grew quickly. Fans couldn't help but wonder what made Keanu decide to open up now, after keeping such a low profile for so long. Was it about his new movie? Or maybe there was more to it. When the day finally came, viewers tuned in from all over the world. The setting was simple, a cozy room with soft lighting, 2 chairs facing each other, and a small table holding cups of coffee. It felt intimate, almost like you were eavesdropping on a personal conversation instead of watching a formal interview. At first, things went as expected. The journalist asked about Keanu's latest project, his journey in the film industry, and how he managed to stay grounded despite being in the limelight for decades. Keanu answered politely, smiling occasionally, sharing stories that gave glimpses into his life without revealing too much. But then, halfway through the interview, something shifted. The journalist leaned forward slightly, pausing before asking a question that no one saw coming. "Keanu," they began gently, "you've worked alongside some amazing people in your career. One name that has been on many minds recently is Matthew Perry. How did you two connect, and what are your thoughts on his legacy?" For a moment, the room fell silent. You could see Kanye West visibly take a deep breath, his expression changing ever so slightly. It was clear this wasn't a topic he had planned to discuss. Everyone held their breath, waiting to see if he would answer at all. Finally, he spoke, his voice calm but tinged with emotion. "Matthew, he was more than just a friend," Keanu said slowly, choosing his words carefully. "He was someone I deeply respected, not just as an actor but as a human being." The audience sat up straighter, suddenly captivated. This wasn't the usual surface-level chatter about celebrities knowing each other. There was weight behind Keanu's words, a sense that he was about to share something meaningful. He continued, explaining how their paths crossed years ago at a charity event. Both were there supporting causes close to their hearts. And during a break in the evening, they found themselves chatting casually. What started as small talk about motorcycles turned into a deeper conversation about life in Hollywood, the pressures of fame, and the loneliness that sometimes came with it. As Keanu described those early interactions, his tone softened. "You know when you meet someone and instantly feel like you've known them forever? That's how it was with Matthew," he said, glancing downward for a second before looking back at the interviewer. "We weren't best friends right away, but there was an understanding between us. Like we both knew what it meant to carry certain burdens silently." What followed next shocked even the most devoted fans. Keanu admitted that while they may not have hung out every weekend, their friendship was built on moments of vulnerability, times when they reached out to each other during rough patches. He talked about late-night phone calls where they'd vent about everything from bad days on set to struggles with self-doubt. They exchanged letters too, handwritten notes filled with encouragement and raw honesty. These exchanges remained private, until now, hidden from public view, which only added to the intrigue. People listening to the interview couldn't believe what they were hearing. Here was Keanu Reeves, one of the most guarded celebrities in the business, opening up about a side of his life no one knew existed. And it wasn't just about him. It was about Matthew Perry, a man whose wit and charm had brought joy to millions, but whose personal battles had often gone unnoticed. By speaking candidly, Keanu was pulling back the curtain on a friendship that felt authentic and real, reminding everyone that even stars are human. The journalist nodded along, clearly moved by Keanu's words. "Do you think people truly understood Matthew beyond his role in Friends?" they asked softly. Keanu hesitated for a beat, then shook his head. No, I don't think they did, he replied honestly. And that's part of why I wanted to talk about him today. Matthew deserved to be remembered for more than just his jokes or his character. He was complex, brilliant, and incredibly kind. He cared deeply about others even when he was struggling himself. By the end of this segment, social media platforms were ablaze with reactions. Fans flooded Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok with messages expressing gratitude for Keanu's openness. Some shared memories of watching Friends as kids, realizing for the first time how much Matthew must have endured off-screen. Others praised Keanu for using his platform to honor his friend in such a genuine way. The interview hadn't even ended yet, but already, it was shaping up to be one of the most memorable moments in recent pop culture history. Little did anyone know, this was only the beginning. As the conversation continued, Keanu would delve even deeper into his bond with Matthew, shedding light on aspects of the late actor's life that few had ever considered. But for now, the world was left reeling, eager to hear more about a friendship that transcended fame and left an indelible mark on both men's lives. After that heartfelt moment in the interview, Keanu took a deep breath. He seemed to be gathering his thoughts, as if he was stepping back into memories he hadn't revisited in a long time. The journalist gave him space, letting the silence linger for a few seconds before gently prompting him to continue. You mentioned vulnerability earlier, they said. Can you tell us more about what drew you and Matthew together? Keanu nodded slowly, his gaze fixed somewhere distant, like he was picturing those early days when their friendship began. It's funny how life works sometimes, he started, his voice soft but steady. We met at this charity event. I think it was for some kind of children's foundation. Both of us were there because we cared about giving back, but honestly, I didn't expect to connect with anyone on a personal level. You go to these things, shake hands, take photos, and move on. But Matthew, he was different. He paused, smiling faintly as if recalling a specific memory. We ended up talking about motorcycles, believe it or not. Turns out we both loved riding. That broke the ice right away. We spent half the night geeking out over engines and road trips. It felt easy, natural, you know? No pretense, no pressure. Just two guys sharing a passion. The interviewer smiled too, clearly intrigued by the unexpected detail. So bikes brought you closer? They asked. Yeah, in a way, Keanu replied. But it wasn't just the bikes. As the night went on, we started talking about other stuff. Things that mattered more than horsepower or speed. Fame can be isolating, you know. People see your face on screen or read headlines about your life, but they don't really see you. And I think we both felt that. There's this weird loneliness that comes with being in the public eye all the time. You're surrounded by people, yet you feel completely alone. Keanu leaned forward slightly, resting his elbows on his knees. His body language suggested he was opening up even more, ready to share something deeply personal. Matthew understood that feeling better than most. He had this ability to make people laugh, to light up a room with his energy, but underneath all that charm, he carried a lot of weight. I could see it in his eyes sometimes, even when he was joking around. He wasn't just performing for others, he was trying to find a way to cope with his own struggles. The audience listened intently, hanging on to every word. This wasn't the typical celebrity fluff piece where actors praised each other superficially. Keanu was painting a vivid picture of a genuine connection, one built on shared experiences and mutual understanding. He described how, after that initial meeting, he and Matthew kept in touch sporadically at first. Text messages here, phone calls there. Over time, though, their conversations became more frequent and meaningful. There were nights when I'd call him, and he'd answer sounding exhausted, Keanu recalled. Not physically tired, but emotionally drained. He'd talk about feeling stuck, like no matter what he did, he couldn't escape certain expectations. People expected him to always be Chandler Bing, the witty, sarcastic guy who could turn any situation into a punchline. But that wasn't who he was off-screen, not entirely anyway. Keanu paused again, his expression thoughtful. I think that's why we clicked. We both knew what it was like to feel boxed in by our roles, by the images people had of us. For me, it was being the action hero, or the brooding romantic lead. For Matthew, it was being Chandler. Don't get me wrong, he loved that character and he was proud of what he accomplished with Friends, but it wasn't the whole story. And I think that gap between who you are and who people think you are, it can eat away at you if you let it. The journalist nodded empathetically. Did you ever feel like you were helping each other through those moments? They asked. Absolutely, Keanu responded without hesitation. When Matthew called me during tough times, I tried to remind him that he wasn't alone. I told him that everyone feels lost sometimes, even people who seem like they have it all figured out. And honestly, he did the same for me. There were days when I doubted myself, when I wondered if I was doing enough or being enough. Matthew had this way of cutting through all the noise and reminding me that it's okay to be imperfect. He'd say, "Hey, we're human. We're allowed to stumble." Those words meant a lot to me. As Keanu spoke, it was clear that their friendship wasn't just about commiserating over shared challenges. It was also about celebrating the good moments, however fleeting they might be. He talked about times when they'd meet up casually, grabbing coffee or going for a ride on their bikes. They'd joke around, laugh until their sides hurt, and momentarily forget about the pressures of their careers. Those moments of joy stood out in stark contrast to the heavier conversations they often had, creating a balance that made their bond even stronger. I remember one afternoon in particular, Keanu said, his tone warming as he reminisced. We were sitting outside this little cafe in Los Angeles just chatting about random stuff. Out of nowhere, Matthew looked at me and said, "You know, Keanu, I think we're lucky." I was surprised because at the time neither of us was exactly feeling lucky, so I asked him what he meant. He said, "We get to do what we love for a living, and we've got people who care about us. Even on the bad days, that counts for something." That statement stayed with Keanu, becoming a source of comfort whenever he faced difficulties of his own. "It sounds simple, but it's true," he told the interviewer. "Life is messy, and fame doesn't shield you from that. If anything, it amplifies everything, the highs and the lows. But having someone who gets it, who sees you for who you really are, that makes all the difference." By the time Keanu finished recounting these memories, viewers were spellbound. Social media platforms buzzed with reactions as fans expressed admiration for both men and their willingness to support each other through thick and thin. Many commented on how relatable their struggles were, pointing out that everyone, regardless of status or success, deals with feelings of inadequacy and isolation at some point. But the interview wasn't over yet. As the conversation shifted gears, Keanu began to delve into the darker aspects of Matthew's life. The battles he fought silently, the pain he hid behind laughter, and the impact it ultimately had on those who loved him. Though the mood grew heavier, Keanu's words remained filled with compassion and respect, honoring his friend's memory while shedding light on the complexities of mental health and addiction. For now, the world was left reflecting on the power of friendship and the importance of reaching out to others, even when it feels impossible. Little did anyone know, the next part of Keanu's story would reveal truths that would leave them shaken and inspired to confront their own vulnerabilities. The room grew quieter as Keanu shifted in his seat, his expression turning more somber. The interviewer sensed the shift too, and gave him a moment to gather his thoughts. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a weight that made it clear this was going to be one of the hardest parts of the conversation, for him to share, and for everyone else to hear. "I think it's important to talk about this," Keanu began, his eyes fixed on the floor before meeting the interviewer's gaze. Matthew wasn't just dealing with the usual ups and downs of life. He was fighting battles that most people couldn't even imagine. Addiction, depression. These weren't choices for him. They were part of who he was, struggles he carried every single day. Keanu paused, taking a deep breath. It was obvious how much this topic affected him. His hands fidgeted slightly, and for a moment he seemed lost in thought. Then he continued, his voice steady but tinged with sadness. "Addiction is tricky. People see someone successful, someone who has everything they could ever want. And they assume they're fine. But addiction doesn't care about success or money or fame. It's like a storm inside you, raging no matter where you are or what you've achieved. He went on to explain how Matthew confided in him about his lifelong battle with substance abuse. There were times when he felt like he was winning, like he had control over it, and then there were other times when it felt like the whole world was crumbling around him. He didn't ask for any of it, it just happened. And it was relentless. Keanu described how Matthew often talked about feeling trapped in a cycle he couldn't break free from. He'd say things like, "I don't know why I keep doing this to myself," or, "Why can't I just be happy?" Keanu's voice cracked slightly as he repeated those words. It broke my heart because I knew he meant them. He wasn't looking for sympathy. He just wanted someone to understand. The audience sat frozen, absorbing every word. This wasn't the polished, glamorous version of Matthew Perry fans had grown accustomed to seeing on screen. This was raw, unfiltered honesty, a side of him few had glimpsed before. Keanu painted a picture of a man who wore humor as armor, using jokes and wit to deflect pain and mask vulnerability. But beneath the laughter lay scars that ran deep. He used to tell me, "If I stop being funny, people might stop loving me," Keanu revealed, his tone heavy with emotion. Can you imagine living with that kind of fear? Always wondering if your worth depends on making others laugh? That's not just pressure, it's suffocating. The interviewer nodded, visibly moved. Do you think that played into his struggle? With addiction? They asked gently. Keanu sighed deeply, leaning back in his chair. Absolutely. When you're constantly trying to live up to expectations, whether it's from fans, friends, or yourself, you start looking for ways to cope. For Matthew, substances became a way to numb the noise, to escape the weight of it all. But they also became another source of guilt and shame. It was a vicious cycle. As Keanu spoke, he emphasized that Matthew's addiction wasn't something he could simply snap out of. It wasn't a lack of willpower or discipline. It was a disease, one that required immense strength to fight against. People don't realize how hard it is to recover, Keanu said earnestly. Every day is a battle. Some days you win and some days you don't. And when you lose, it feels like the entire world is judging you, like you've failed somehow. But recovery isn't linear. It's messy, and it takes time. He shared how Matthew would sometimes call him after particularly tough nights, his voice trembling with frustration and despair. He'd apologize for bothering me like he thought he was burdening me, but I told him, "You're not a burden, you're my friend." Keanu's voice softened as he recalled those moments. I tried to remind him that asking for help isn't weakness, it's courage. Facing your demons head-on takes guts, and Matthew had plenty of that. Despite the darkness of their conversations, Keanu also highlighted Matthew's resilience. He never gave up, he said firmly. Even on his worst days, he kept trying. He went to rehab multiple times, worked with therapists, and surrounded himself with people who cared about him. He wanted to get better, and that says a lot about the kind of person he was. But Keanu didn't shy away from acknowledging the toll it took on Matthew's mental health. Depression is sneaky, he explained. It creeps in when you least expect it, whispering lies in your ear until you start believing them. Matthew struggled with self-doubt, with feeling like he wasn't good enough. No matter how much praise he received or how many people loved him, he couldn't shake that feeling. At one point during the interview, Keanu shared a story that left viewers heartbroken. There was this one night when we were talking on the phone, and he said something that stuck with me. He said, "I feel like I'm standing on the edge of a cliff, and no matter which way I turn, I'm going to fall." Keanu paused, swallowing hard. I tried to reassure him, to tell him he wasn't alone and that we'd figure it out together. But hearing him say that, it haunted me. The journalist remained silent for a moment, letting the gravity of Keanu's words sink in. Finally, they asked, "What did you do when he opened up like that?" "I listened," Keanu replied simply. Sometimes that's all you can do. You can't fix someone's problems for them, no matter how much you want to. But you can be there. Hold space for them and remind them that they're not invisible. That's what I tried to do for Matthew. I wanted him to know that I saw him. Not Chandler Bing, not the celebrity, but him. The real him. By the end of this segment, tears flowed freely among viewers. Social media lit up with messages of support and admiration for both men. Fans expressed gratitude for Keanu's willingness to shine a light on such a difficult subject, while others opened up about their own experiences with mental health and addiction. Many praised Matthew for his bravery, vowing to remember him not just as an entertainer but as a human being who fought valiantly against his inner demons. As the interview progressed, Keanu prepared to discuss the final chapter of Matthew's life, the last time they saw each other and the lingering regret that followed. Though painful, he believed it was crucial to share these memories, hoping they would inspire others to reach out to loved ones and offer support without judgment. For now, the world held its breath, waiting to hear the rest of Keanu's story. Poignant reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of connection in the face of adversity. Keanu's voice grew softer as he transitioned into what felt like the most personal and painful part of the interview. His hands rested on his knees, fingers loosely intertwined, as if holding onto something tangible would steady him. The mirror room was quiet except for the faint hum of the camera equipment, and every viewer could sense that Keanu was about to share a memory he had carried with him for a long time. I remember the last time I saw Matthew, he began, his tone measured, but heavy with emotion. It was just a few months before. He trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. For a moment, he closed his eyes, exhaling slowly before continuing. We met up at this little cafe near Griffith Park. It wasn't anything fancy, just a place we both liked because it felt calm away from all the noise. We sat outside under an umbrella, drinking coffee and talking about everything and nothing. The interviewer leaned forward slightly, giving Keanu space to recount the moment without interruption. "What did you talk about?" they asked gently, their voice barely above a whisper. Keanu smiled faintly, though it didn't reach his eyes. "You know, it's funny. The big things in life are often discussed over small moments. That day we laughed a lot. Matthew told me about this ridiculous argument he'd gotten into with his neighbor over a parking spot. He acted it out, doing impressions of both himself and the neighbor, and I couldn't stop laughing. But then, the mood shifted. Not abruptly, but gradually. He started talking about how tired he was." "Tired?" the interviewer echoed, encouraging him to elaborate. "Yeah," Keanu said, nodding. "Not physically tired, emotionally. He said he felt like he was carrying this weight that never went away no matter what he did. He talked about how hard it was to keep fighting, to keep showing up every day when it felt like the world expected so much from him. And honestly, I think part of him wanted to let go, to step back from everything. But he also knew he couldn't, not completely. There were people who depended on him, fans who looked up to him. So he kept pushing, even when it hurt." Keanu paused, staring down at his hands as if searching for the right words. "I wish I'd known then how much he was struggling. I mean, I knew he was having a tough time. I always knew. But I didn't realize how deep it ran. Looking back now, I see signs I missed. Maybe if I'd paid closer attention." His voice broke slightly and he stopped to compose himself. The interviewer waited patiently, allowing the silence to stretch until Keanu was ready to continue. "It's not guilt exactly," he said finally. "Well, maybe some of it is, but mostly it's regret. Regret that I didn't call him more often after that day. Regret that I didn't tell him how much he meant to me while he was still here." For many watching, those words hit hard. They resonated deeply because they spoke to a universal truth. The fear of leaving things unsaid, the ache of wondering if we did enough. Social media erupted with comments as viewers shared their own stories of loss and longing, connecting with Keanu's raw honesty. He went on to describe the promises they made to each other during that meeting, promises neither of them realized, would go unfulfilled. "We said we'd catch up soon like we always did. Let's go riding again," I told him, "or take another road trip." He smiled and nodded, saying, "Yeah, we should. But life gets busy, doesn't it? You think there's always tomorrow, always another chance, and then suddenly there isn't." The interviewer nodded solemnly. When you heard the news about Matthew's passing, what went through your mind? Keanu took a shaky breath, his jaw tightening as he fought back tears. I don't think I've ever felt shock quite like that before. It was like the ground dropped out from under me. One minute I was reading scripts or working on set, and the next I was sitting alone in my trailer trying to process it. I kept thinking about our last conversation, replaying it in my head over and over. Did I say enough? Did I listen enough? Was there something I could have done differently? He shook his head, as if trying to shake loose the weight of those questions. I'll never have answers to those questions, and that's the hardest part. But I do know this. Matthew didn't deserve to feel the way he did. No one does. Addiction and depression, they're isolating diseases, ones that make you feel like you're drowning even when you're surrounded by people who love you. And I hate that Matthew felt like he had to carry that burden alone. As Keanu spoke, his grief was palpable, but so was his determination to honor Matthew's memory. I've thought a lot about what he would want, he admitted. Would he want us to mourn him forever? No, probably not. Matthew loved life, even when it was hard. He found joy in the little things, in making people laugh, in riding his bike, in spending time with friends. He wouldn't want us to dwell on the sadness. He'd want us to celebrate the good parts of him, the parts that made him special. The interviewer nodded, clearly moved by Keanu's reflection. Do you think sharing your story today will help others who might be feeling the same way Matthew did? I hope so, Keanu replied earnestly. If even one person hears this and feels less alone, then it's worth it. Mental health. It's not something we talk about enough, especially in Hollywood. People assume that if you're successful, you must be happy. But success doesn't shield you from pain. If anything, it amplifies it sometimes. The pressure to maintain a certain image, to live up to expectations, it can crush you if you let it. He emphasized the importance of reaching out, of checking in on loved ones even when they seem okay. You never know what someone is going through behind closed doors, he said. A simple text, a phone call, it can mean the world to someone who's struggling. Don't wait for tomorrow. Do it today. Because tomorrow isn't guaranteed for anyone. By the time Keanu finished speaking, the atmosphere in the room had shifted. What started as a candid conversation about friendship and loss had evolved into a powerful message of hope and resilience. Viewers flooded social media with gratitude, thanking Keanu for his vulnerability and urging others to prioritize mental health and connection. As the interview moved toward its conclusion, Keanu prepared to reflect on the lessons Matthew's life and death had taught him. Though the pain of losing his friend remained fresh, he chose to focus on the light Matthew brought into the world, using his platform to inspire others to cherish the people in their lives and seek help when needed. For everyone listening, it was clear that Keanu's words weren't just about honoring Matthew. They were a call to action, a reminder that kindness, empathy, and understanding can save lives. And as the final segment approached, anticipation hung in the air, eager to hear how Keanu planned to carry forward the legacy of a man who touched so many hearts. Keanu sat back in his chair, his posture relaxed but his eyes still heavy with emotion. The weight of the conversation lingered in the air, and for a moment, it felt like no one wanted to break the silence. Not the interviewer, not Keanu, and certainly not the millions watching at home. But then, as if sensing the need to bring closure to such a raw and heartfelt discussion, Keanu spoke again. His voice was softer now, tinged with both sadness and resolve. You know, he began, when someone you care about leaves this world, you're left with all these questions. What could I have done differently? Could I have been there more? Should I have said something sooner? He paused, letting the words hang in the air before continuing. But dwelling on those questions doesn't bring them back. What does is remembering the good they brought into your life. And Matthew, he brought so much. The interviewer nodded, giving him a small smile that seemed to say, take your time. Keanu leaned forward slightly, resting his forearms on his knees. Matthew taught me a lot about resilience, about finding laughter even when life feels unbearably heavy. He reminded me that humor isn't just a tool for entertainment. It's a lifeline. It's how we connect, how we cope, how we survive, he went on to explain that Matthew's legacy wasn't just tied to his iconic role as Chandler Bing or the laughs he gave audiences around the globe. It was deeper than that. He showed us what it means to be human, to struggle, to stumble, and still keep moving forward. That takes courage, real courage. Not the kind you see in action movies, but the quiet, everyday bravery it takes to face yourself in the mirror and say, "I'm still here." Matthew did that every single day, even when it was hard. As Keanu reflected on these lessons, his tone shifted from somber to hopeful. If there's one thing I want people to take away from this, it's that we're all fighting battles others can't see. Some of us wear our struggles openly, others hide them behind smiles or jokes, but none of us are alone. We're all connected by our humanity, the pain, the joy, the messiness of it all. He paused, glancing down at his hands before looking directly into the camera. For the first time during the interview, he wasn't just speaking to the journalist, he was addressing everyone watching. I think Matthew would want us to focus on connection, on reaching out to each other, even when it feels awkward or uncomfortable. You never know who might need to hear that they matter, that they're loved. A text, a call, a hug. It doesn't have to be big to make a difference. Sometimes the smallest gestures carry the most weight. The interviewer chimed in gently, asking, "Do you feel like sharing your story today as part of honoring Matthew's memory?" Keanu nodded without hesitation. Absolutely. Matthew didn't shy away from being vulnerable, even though it was scary. He opened up about his struggles with addiction, with mental health, with feeling like he wasn't enough. And yeah, it was messy sometimes. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. By talking about him today, I hope I can encourage others to do the same, to share their stories, to ask for help, to let people in. Because isolation, it kills. Connection saves. His words resonated deeply with viewers, sparking an outpouring of reactions online. People shared anecdotes about times they reached out to friends or family members struggling in silence, crediting Keanu's message with inspiring them to act. Others admitted they had been hesitant to open up about their own battles, but felt empowered after hearing him speak so candidly. Social media buzzed with hashtags like "Twine check on your people" and "I break the silence," turning the interview into a catalyst for meaningful conversations about mental health. Keanu then turned his thoughts toward the future, acknowledging that while grief doesn't disappear, it evolves. "Losing Matthew hasn't gotten easier," he admitted. "Some days I wake up and forget for a second that he's gone. Then it hits me, and it hurts all over again. But other days I remember the laughter, the late-night talks, the rides on our bikes. Those memories, they're gifts. They remind me of the impact he had on my life and on so many others." He smiled faintly, his expression softening as he recalled one of Matthew's favorite sayings. He used to joke, "If you're going through hell, keep going." Winston Churchill said that, but Matthew lived it. He kept going, even when it felt impossible. And maybe that's the lesson here. Keep going. Ask for help when you need it. Lean on the people who care about you, and don't be afraid to reach out to others. Life is tough, but we're tougher together. The interviewer thanked Keanu for his honesty and vulnerability, noting how rare it was for celebrities to open up so authentically. "It's not easy to talk about loss or mental health," they said, "but you've given so many people permission to feel, to grieve, and to heal. Thank you for that." Keanu nodded, offering a small, grateful smile. "Thank you for letting me share this." Matthew deserved to be remembered for who he really was. A brilliant, funny, complicated, beautiful person. And if telling his story helps even one person feel less alone, then it's worth it. With that, the interview came to a close. As Keanu stood up, shaking hands with the journalist and exchanging a few final words off camera, viewers were left with a profound sense of reflection. The conversation hadn't been polished or rehearsed. It was raw, honest, and deeply human. It reminded everyone that behind every celebrity is a person navigating the same challenges we all face: love, loss, fear, and hope. In the hours and days that followed, the ripple effects of Keanu's words continued to spread. Mental health organizations reported spikes in donations and inquiries, while countless individuals took steps to reconnect with loved ones they'd drifted apart from. Fans flooded comment sections and forums with messages of gratitude, calling the interview a turning point in how society views mental health and celebrity culture. For Keanu, returning to his private life after such a public moment must have been bittersweet. While he likely preferred to retreat from the spotlight once again, his decision to honor Matthew Perry in such a heartfelt way ensured that the late actor's legacy would live on, not just as a beloved entertainer, but as a symbol of resilience and authenticity. And so, as the world moved forward, Keanu's tribute served as a reminder that true connection transcends fame, fortune, and even death. It's the moments we share, the kindness we extend, and the courage we show in being vulnerable that truly define us. In honoring Matthew, Keanu had unknowingly inspired millions to embrace their own humanity, and perhaps to find strength in the shared experience of simply being alive.